Members of Congress waved Ukrainian flags and chanted Ukraine on the House floor after it became clear more money would be sent to Ukraine to fight off Russia. Over the weekend, the House allocated tens of billions of dollars for foreign wars through bipartisan legislation. And isn't it nice when our lawmakers can reach across the aisle to provide cash for weapons and foreign wars? Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson garnered enough support from Democratic lawmakers in order to secure the passage of this appropriations bill, or I should note, there were 4 separate bills that were voted on. The House voted on 4 separate bills, which amount to a total of $95 billion. 3 for funding Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. A 4th bill could result in a nationwide ban of TikTok. Now, the legislation also includes $60 billion for Kyiv, $26 billion for Israel, and humanitarian aid for civilians in conflict zones, including Gaza, and $8 billion for the Indo-Pacific region. It would direct the president to seek repayment from the Ukrainian government of $10 billion in economic assistance, a concept supported by Donald Trump, who had pushed for any aid to Ukraine to be in the form of a loan. But it would also allow the president to forgive those loans beginning in 2026. So there is a loophole to basically erase that debt should a future president decide to do so. Now, since Russia's invasion in 2022, Congress has approved a total of $113 billion in war funding for Ukraine. And the last time Congress had approved any funding for Ukraine and its war against Russia's invasion, they did so in 2022. So it's been a while since Congress has appropriated more funding, although the Biden administration did manage to work around Congress to secure some funding, additional funding in recent weeks for Ukraine ahead of this appropriations bill. Cenk.
Yeah, so look, I'm old enough to remember when the whole Congress told us we don't have enough money for paid family leave, higher minimum wage, lower drug prices. A lot of these things, voting rights don't even require any money. And they just said, we're not gonna do it. If it helps the American people, we got no interest in it. And I'm old enough to remember when the media called Joe Manchin a moderate and Kyrsten Sinema a moderate for voting down these bills that would have helped the great majority of Americans, that the great majority of Americans want. But we were told that they were moderate because we can't afford it. And they're fiscally conservative, really like level-headed, serious people. You know that we cannot afford anything for the American people. Oh, war? Of course, unlimited money, unlimited. We were gonna give Israel $14 billion, no, let's make it 26. Now 9 of it is for aid, and I hope that it actually goes to aid, because as we explained earlier in the show, it's not allowed to go to UNRWA, which is the #1 organization providing aid for Palestinians.
Regardless of the organization that gets the funding to provide humanitarian aid to Gaza, how does the humanitarian aid enter Gaza exactly?
It can't even enter, and second of all, you wouldn't need as much humanitarian aid if we didn't also send them $17 billion to kill more Palestinians. And that's what's happening here. So let's not pretend that that's not happening, because that's definitely what this is. So whenever we need to kill some other people, we got plenty of money for it. You know why? Because several reasons, but all tied up in one word: lobbyists. So the defense contractors are gonna, as we say often, unfortunately, literally make a killing. They're gonna make so much money from this. The oil companies could make more money, and of course AIPAC. So AIPAC's the #1 donor to Mike Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries and Joe Biden. And not one mainstream media article ever mentioned any of the funding from defense contractors or AIPAC as potential reasons for why this aid package got approved. Not one mentioned it one time as far as I saw. If I'm wrong, please send it in. You're telling me the $100 million that AIPAC's gonna spend, let alone the defense contractors, didn't affect this vote at all. It's not even worth mentioning. Absurd, absurd. Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you.
Today, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in regard to a case having to do with homeless people in a town in Oregon. Basically, the town banned encampments, and as a result, of course, they were taken to court for doing so because they literally don't have a single shelter in this town. They don't have a single shelter. So where exactly do you expect people who are homeless to go? Bear with me, you're probably wondering why I'm bringing up this case, but it's relevant. We have a real housing crisis in this country, a real housing shortage. Yes, the homeless issue is a lot more complicated than people want to make it out to be. It's not simply a housing issue, but housing has a lot to do with it for a lot of Americans who were pushed out, priced out of rental units, obviously priced out of being able to afford a home to buy for themselves and their families. And so the argument is, where do you want them to go? If you're going to start citing people who, pitch a tent and decide to sleep on the sidewalk, if they're not allowed to do that and there's not enough housing and there's no shelter for them to go to, what do you want them to do? My point in bringing that up is the federal government has totally abandoned this issue. And what do we keep hearing from the government when it comes to issues that matter most to American citizens? We don't have the money for it. How are we gonna pay for it? Oh, there's a legislative filibuster in the Senate. That $95 billion could have been very useful in spurring a construction bonanza that we desperately need in this country, but that's not the priority. The priority isn't that. The priority is to think of ways to, I guess, criminalize people who literally have no other place to go but the sidewalks or in parks or somewhere outdoors to sleep. It's insane what we're prioritizing in this country. But also, we focus a lot on Israel, and I stand by everything that we've said, but I also want to talk about Ukraine a little bit, because what is the end game? I want to know what the end game is. Okay, people get jumped down my throat, how dare you? We must help Ukraine defend itself. I hear you, but what is the end game? They have lost more ground to Russia. What is the strategy? I just want to understand what the strategy is.
Ukraine is enormously complicated because did we partially agitate for that war? Yes. Did we prevent basically a peace treaty when Boris Johnson went over there and made Zelensky rip up the peace treaty? Yes. Does that mean that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was okay? No. Okay. And should they keep the republics that they're already occupying? No, I don't want that. But I'd see no pathway to a peace treaty in the short term without giving up land to Russia, which then feels like you're rewarding their imperialist, aggressive, offensive war against Ukraine. So it is a very, very difficult question, okay? So, but if you say to me, hey, let's keep sending them money, I ask the same question Anna asks. How long? And are we positive that that money is better spent there than here? So if you say to me the $9 billion in aid, it's not just going to Palestinians, it's going to help a lot of countries in Africa, etc. Are you comfortable with that portion of the bill? Yes, partly because we broke Gaza, we helped to destroy Gaza, we should help to rebuild it. In the famous words of Colin Powell on the Iraq War, if you break it, you own it, right? So I can understand the logic of saying, hey, don't give money to critical things that Americans need because we broke those people over there and we need to help them. Or we didn't break them in Africa, but God, we're gonna save so many lives. Okay, I see the logic of that. In Ukraine, that's why it's close, because you are saving lives. You don't want Russia to gain from this offensive war. But at the same time, whenever it's defense contractors getting the money first, man, all of a sudden they could find infinite money.
I have a problem with this being so open-ended, right? And so I want to have a better understanding of what people who support the limitless money going to Ukraine, what do you want the end game to be? Because a lot of money has already been provided, not just from the United States, but from other European countries who understandably have a massive stake in the game, right? Poland's been really contributing to this war effort. But the money has not helped Ukraine maintain control of their land. They have lost ground. So what's the strategy?
So honestly, as best as I can tell real quick, and then I want to get to the two other things regarding these bills, is that you have basically two answers. One is do a peace treaty now where the Russians basically keep the land they're occupying, or drag this out, with no timeline at all. 2 years, 20 years, until the Russian military is exhausted, like we were and they were in Afghanistan, to turn Ukraine into Afghanistan. I don't know that that helps Ukraine. And so, because look, remember, the US has a different interest than the Ukrainians do. The Ukrainians want their land back. They're very nationalistic, understandably so.
Understandably, I get it.
They were invaded, etc. But they also want peace at some point, right? They want both of those things. The Americans care a little bit about those things, the American government versus the people, right? But the main thing the American government wants is, if you're being honest, for this war to drag on as long as humanly possible, to keep draining the Russian military of all of its resources and to bankrupt Russia in Ukraine as they hang on for dear life year after year after year. So if the Ukrainians suffer in the meanwhile, America goes, that's a price you're paying on our behalf to drain the Russian military.
And look, to be fair, Ukraine and its president Volodymyr Zelensky has been asking for this aid for a while. Like it's not like the US is, forcing it on Ukraine.
No,
Ukraine has been asking for the military aid, and they got the military aid. And by the way, this is precisely why you have this ongoing civil war within the Republican Party in the House of Representatives. You have the pro-Trump America First crowd that does not want to provide more funding for foreign wars, whether it be Ukraine or Israel. And then you have the Mike Johnson crowd. By the way, Mike Johnson really presented himself as an America First type legislator, but kind of flipped the script as soon as he had this position of power as the House Speaker. So as a result of this, you have figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking out. I want to go to this next video, which gives you a sense of how she felt after the bill was passed by the House of Representatives.
And then he did this bullshit here on the House floor, foreign war package that does nothing for America. It's unbelievable. I'm thankful that America gets to see who this man is. I'm thankful that America gets to see who the people that voted for this is, because this is the only way it's going to change. People have to see the truth.
Now there's a significant portion of Republican lawmakers who voted against funding to Ukraine in particular. Remember, there were 4 separate bills, so they were able to vote separately on Ukraine. The vote was 311 to 112 in favor of aid to Ukraine, with a majority of Republicans, 112 of them voting against it, and 1 representative, Dan Muser of Pennsylvania, voting present. Cenk.
So I want to clarify the vote count and then get to the last part of the bill. So 101 Republicans voted yes, 112 Republicans voted no. So majority said no on the Republican side. And if you are America First, like Marjorie Taylor Greene is, or you might hate her, etc., but that is a consistent position to say, no, I do not want to fund Ukraine, Israel, or anyone else. And she did vote against both of those different pieces of legislation. So she was internally consistent, as the right wing were throughout. So you could disagree with her policies, but that is where the conservatives stand today in America. Okay, just so you know. Now let's turn to the Democrats. 37 brave Democrats voted no, including I think all the Justice Democrats, Ro Khanna and Jamie Raskin. So, but that means 173 Democrats voted yes on the Israel portion. And I think every one of them, except 1 president vote, voted yes on Ukraine. Okay, so I don't ever want to hear any Democrat outside of those 37 come and tell us, oh no, the Democratic Party cares so much about Palestinian lives. No, you just funded to kill more Palestinians. You just said 34,000 dead is not enough. 25,000 women and children dead, not enough. We're giving you a $17 billion gift to kill more. And by the way, no restrictions, full green light. So on this show, if there's a story about Joe Biden or the Democratic leadership wagging a finger at Netanyahu or anything along those lines, or boy, he really gave him hell over the phone, we will tell you every time that it is a lie. It is not at all true. Joe Biden loves the maniacal far-right wing government of Israel, and will give them any amount of money and any green light that they need under any and all circumstances. If I said to you, if there's only 2,500 dead women and children in Palestine, that they'd fund them even if there was 25,000 dead women and children. People would say, oh, come on, I don't know about that. They just did. Now, when I tell you, it doesn't matter if the number's 250,000, I'm not sure if it matters if it's 2.5 million. As long as the AIPAC checks clear and the defense contractor checks clear, Biden and the Democratic Party will fund any genocide as long as they get paid off of it and they get to keep their power. And if someone tells you it is not relevant that AIPAC is going to spend $100 million legally bribing politicians this election cycle alone, well, look, I don't think anybody's that stupid. So they're obviously lying to you on purpose while calling themselves reporters and journalists. $11.2 million to Joe Biden from AIPAC. And as I've said now many times, Mike Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries, their #1 donor is AIPAC. They will always serve their donors. In this case, it happens to be AIPAC. Last thing, these morons also did more sanctions on Iran because, they worked so well recently. Oh no, right, Iran just fired all those rockets at Israel because the sanctions don't work. Peace treaties worked. You know how many times they fired rockets when we were under the peace treaty that Obama had signed with them? 0. But the morons think more agitation is the better way to go because defense contractors. And lastly, they voted to ban TikTok as if they weren't ridiculous enough. So, the real danger is kids dancing on TikTok. The Chinese government does not own TikTok. I now believe that national security is 100% BS, made up, so-called concern, because TikTok is turning kids progressive and against Israel. And by the way, Facebook is funding lobbyists to make sure they kill TikTok, because that's how this so-called democracy works. Open auction. All the politicians are for sale and highest bidder wins, even if it's a foreign government. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.